All right, we are back, everybody. So today we're going to do a nice little exercise here on playoffpredictors.com. So this is something I probably discovered maybe 5 or 6 years ago now, but very fun to do this time of year because you can really, basically what it is you just go down every game of the season for the NFL. I believe they do it for other sports as well, but I mainly use it for the NFL. And all you're doing really is just picking the results of every game, and then it automatically calculates the standings for you over on either side here. So we're gonna go through today and just let's pick these games and see what the results look like, and maybe even pick the playoffs as well while we're at it. And it'll be fun to look at once we get back to the end of the season. So without further ado, let's get right into it. So I'll give a little bit of analysis here as we go along, but generally speaking, um, you're going to find that a lot of the teams are going to be picked more frequently than others, and a lot of teams that pick to lose games will also be pretty frequent. So we'll get started right away here with the first game. We're going to go with the Chiefs, and then go right along here with San Fran over the Pittsburgh Steelers, um, New Orleans against Tennessee. That could be an interesting game. I'll probably go with the Tennessee Titans on that one. And then, of course, got to go with the Philadelphia Eagles here. And also should note that this does split it up each week by interconference games in the middle, AFC on the left, and NFC on the right. Just keeps it nice, neat, and uh, divided up here for us, so it's nice and easy to follow along. And then the NFC standings are here on the right, and the AFC standings are on the left, and it will change as we do every game here. So moving on to the NFC for Week 1, we'll go with Washington over Arizona. I'll pick probably Atlanta over Carolina, though I don't think either of those teams will have a particularly good season. Tampa Bay and Minnesota. I actually think Tampa Bay is going to have a pretty nice year this year. I know they did lose, of course, Tom Brady to retirement in the offseason, but I think that team's pretty hungry. They're definitely a group that feels a little bit slighted. They just won the Super Bowl. I suppose 3 years ago now, the 2020 season. We're saying we're in the 2023 season now. It does begin tonight with the Hall of Fame game. So we'll say 3 years ago now that they won the Super Bowl. Um, Nothing against Minnesota. I think Minnesota's going to have another fine season as well, although I do think they did slightly overachieve last year. They won a lot of one-score games, um, but they do obviously still have a lot of talent all around on their roster. So moving along here, I'll go with Green Bay over Chicago. Green Bay, I think, is going to have a nice year this year. Really one of those teams that isn't getting talked about a lot. Jordan Love's kind of a mystery, so I'm excited to see him play. This should be a fun Week 1 matchup between Jordan Love and Justin Fields here, NFC North battle. Then going down here to an NFC West battle, we have the Rams and the Seahawks. I'll pick Seattle here. I do think Seattle's primed to take a bit of a step forward this year. I really like their draft this season, but I do think what's ultimately going to hold them back in the long run is just they're a little bit weak in the trenches on both sides right now, and that's definitely a little bit alarming for a team that wants to make a playoff run. And then wrapping it up here with the NFC, we'll take Dallas over the Giants. I mean, they're just the better team all around. Offensive line, defensive line, secondary, quarterback, um, even in the running game to a degree. I'd say Saquon Barkley's the better running back, but if Dallas could get somebody to pair with Tony Pollard, they definitely could have a presence on the ground. And over here in the AFC, you take Jacksonville over the Indianapolis Colts. Um, Bengals and the Browns, we'll actually come back to this one. I'll say the Ravens over the Texans, Broncos over the Raiders. I don't think Vegas is going to have a very good year this year. I don't like the offseason they had at all. While I'm not a huge fan of what Denver's been building, I do think they'll take a slight step forward last year. I think last year was a bit of an anomaly with them. Not that they'll be a playoff team this year per se, but just because the AFC just has so many wonderful teams, I do think they will make a slight improvement from last year. Then moving on to Miami and the Chargers. This is another great Week 1 matchup. The league's really coming out swinging this year, so I'll say the Chargers. I do believe the Chargers are probably one of the best teams in the AFC heading into this season, although, of course, they do play in the same division as Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, so um, it'll be an uphill battle for them for sure. Buffalo and the Jets and Monday night game, that's going to be another fantastic one. I'll actually say the Jets win this one, as crazy as that might sound. Don't get, stay posted though, because Buffalo is going to go on a tear here after this, I believe. But I think the Jets are going to come out hungry to start the season for sure. And then up here, this game definitely is dependent on if Joe Burrow is healthy or not. Right now, I'm going to go out on a limb and say the Browns actually win this game. I know that might be a little bit unpopular, but I do believe that even if Joe Burrow does decide to come back and play, that the the Bengals did get off to a slow start last year as well, so it might take them a little bit of time to really catch fire, but I'm not worried about the Bengals at all. Once Joe Burrow's back at 100%, they'll be rolling. We know they're going to be a great team. We know they have that winning culture. So moving on to week 2 here, we'll start up at the top here in the AFC. Rematch of the divisional round last year. Got to go with the Chiefs. Ravens, Bengals. I'll actually go Baltimore here. So now Cincinnati's going to drop to 0-2. So like I said, I'm not worried too much about the Bengals, but I do believe that they might have a bit of a struggle the first couple weeks here in September. Then obviously Buffalo, Vegas, that's a gimme. Um, the Chargers against the Tennessee Titans. The Chargers are simply the better team. Then the Colts versus the Houston Texans. Battle of the rookie quarterbacks here. C.J. Stroud, Anthony Richardson, AFC South battle. You know what? I'll go with the Colts here on the road. I think they'll come in and really surprise some people here with Shane Steichen on the sidelines. Um, I don't think the Colts are going to have a spectacular season by any means, but I do think they win this game. Miami against New England. I think this will probably be a closer game than people might expect, but I will give this to Miami. So now they're 1-1. New England drops to 0-2. Then Cleveland versus Pittsburgh on Monday night. This is another one that'll probably be a pretty good game as well. And for this one, I'll actually go with Pittsburgh. I think Pittsburgh might surprise some people this year. I really like the offseason they had. Absolutely adored the draft that they had. Joey Porter Jr. in the second round was a fantastic pickup. That was somebody I would have loved to have seen the Eagles take in the first round, but obviously I'm happy with Nolan Smith and Jalen Carter. Moving along here to Dallas and the Jets, I'll take the Cowboys. I do think Dallas is going to have a nice season this year as well. Um, they didn't really make too many improvements, but the defense was pretty much in place last year. And as long as their offensive line's able to stay healthy, if Tyron Smith's able to stay upright and Zach Martin's showing up and he's engaged, I think they'll pick up right where they left off last year. Nothing against the Jets. Though this will be another really good game. And Washington versus the Denver Broncos. So here I will probably go with the Denver Broncos yet again, um, just because I'm not really sure about Sam Howell starting for the Washington Commanders. So we'll see how that goes. And they had a lot of turnover on their offensive line as well. Moving along to the Thursday night game here, Eagles in the home opener against the Vikings. We know how this goes. Um, Bears against the Bucks. I'll take the Bucks. Green Bay against Atlanta. I think Jordan Love goes into Atlanta. He's able to go get his second straight win. Green Bay's going to start out 2-0 here. Atlanta might be a little bit better than I expected. For a while this summer, I was saying Atlanta was probably going to be last in the NFC South. Though looking at their team a little bit more, I do think they'll be a little bit better. And they weren't an awful team last year by any means. I just wasn't necessarily a huge fan of them taking Bijan Robinson as high as they did, but I think Atlanta will be a little bit better than people might expect. Detroit versus Seattle, this will be another interesting matchup. I'll actually go with Detroit here. Detroit, I think, while I didn't love the draft that they had, I do think that they are going to win the battle in the trenches here, which is going to be very key. And they do have some playmakers on offense. Let's not pretend like they didn't have one of the highest scoring offenses in the league last year. So Detroit's going to start off 1-1 here. Seattle's also going to be 1-1. That sounds about right. I think these are two teams that'll still be hanging around when we get to the end of the season here in the NFC. San Fran against the Rams. Take San Francisco here again. San Francisco just has a really well-rounded team, although obviously some questions at the quarterback position, and I am a little bit unsure about their offensive line. They do have Trent Williams now in my gosh, what year is it with Trent Williams now? Year 14. He came into the league in 2010, so if he's their best offensive lineman, I'd just proceed with a little bit of caution just because he's really getting up there, and they don't have too much else to depend on their offensive line. Then rounding out week 2 here, I'll go Giants over Cardinals, and then Panthers over the Saints. Arizona, I think when all's said and done, they're probably going to be in the running for the number 1 overall pick in 2024. Obviously starting Colt McCoy, and I props to Colt McCoy because he's also supposed in year 14 because he did come in that 2010 draft as well. He's really made a nice journeyman career for himself, but doesn't necessarily equate to W's, if you understand what I'm saying. And then New Orleans against Carolina. I think Bryce Young's going to pick up his first win here against Derek Carr and the Saints. So moving on here to week 3, we've got Tennessee against Cleveland. I'll go Cleveland again. I think Cleveland, I think, is going to have a better year than people might expect as well. They do play in a very tough division, so definitely picking up some wins here in the beginning of the season is going to help out a lot. And Tennessee, they definitely play in one of the weaker divisions, so dropping this game isn't going to be the end of the world for them. And I do like the matchup in the trenches for Cleveland, and that's definitely going to be something that factors into a lot of how I evaluate these games here. So then Jacksonville against Houston, Jaguars, just the better team. Colts against the Ravens, Ravens are the better team. Broncos and the Dolphins, probably go Miami here. I think their defense is definitely better than Denver's. I think Russell Wilson's going to have a tough time going up against that Miami defense. And then, of course, Tua Tagovailoa with Jalen Waddle and Tyreek on the outside. I think they won't have any problem pulling that out. AFC East battle here between the Jets and the Patriots. I think Aaron Rodgers gets it done, sends Bill Belichick down to 0-3, which be very interested to see how that shakes out with them this year if the Patriots end up with another bad season. So this might be Bill's swan song if they end up really having a bad year here. Then Steelers over the Las Vegas Raiders, don't think that's really anything earth-shattering. Same with the Buffalo Bills over the Washington Commanders. Then we do come over here to the Chargers and the Vikings. And if you are curious about what these little red icons are, this just means that the Vikings played on Thursday night the week prior. As with the Eagles, they played each other Thursday night week 2, so they'll have a little bit of extra rest coming into week 3. Although in this case, I don't think it matters. I think the Chargers win this game regardless. And then Kansas City taking care of business against the Bears. Same with the Bengals over the Rams. Bengals finally get that first win of the season on a Monday night. Then we get to the Giants and the 49ers on a Thursday night here. We'll go 49ers. Moving down to Lions and the Falcons, we'll go Detroit Lions. Packers and the Saints. Geez, it's quite possible here that Jordan Love's able to start off 3-0. But I don't know. That's asking a lot. I feel like just with the way the National Football League works, like for every yin, there's a yang. So I'll say the Saints are able to pull this off here. They'll get their first win of the season on the road. Then Carolina and the Seattle Seahawks. I'll take Pete Carroll and the Seahawks. I think they're just simply the better team here. Bryce Young's going to learn a little bit here early in the season that victories don't come as easy as they did when he was with Alabama. So then Dallas against the Cardinals. This isn't another easy one. And then finishing up week 2, yours, mine, and our Philadelphia Eagles are going to finish up with a win to start 3-0 against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So let's go on to week 4 now. Now week 4, we've got an AFC East matchup with the Bills and the Dolphins. I think Buffalo takes care of business yet again. Although it always seems to be a good matchup when these two teams play each other, so I'll definitely be looking forward to watching this game on Red Zone Sunday afternoon. And then what else do we have here? The Baltimore Ravens and the Cleveland Browns. Baltimore very well could start 4-0, so I think Lamar Jackson's going to see a nice return to form this year. He's not going to have to worry about negotiating his own contract while playing out the season. They brought in Odell Beckham Jr. for him this offseason. That'll definitely give him a little bit of a boost. I don't know how much OBJ has left in the tank, but we'll see. I think Baltimore will have a very nice season, though. I don't know if they end up winning the division. I think Joe Burrow is definitely going to have other thoughts about that, and even the Steelers and Browns are going to put up quite a bit of a fight as well. But right now, the Ravens are having a very strong September. Then I think these games here, gimmies yet again. Steelers over the Texans, Bengals over the Titans, and almost said the San Diego Chargers, the Los Angeles Chargers over the Las Vegas Rams. Then we have the Sunday night matchup, prime time, Chiefs and the Jets, Patrick Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers. Jets are going to be rocking those throwback jerseys. I'm sure MetLife Stadium's going to be rocking. But I don't think it matters. The Kansas City Chiefs, they're just on a mission this year. They want that back-to-back. They understand the task at hand. Although if Chris Jones does end up missing the start of the season, obviously that's going to change potentially this 4-0 start for the Chiefs. But right now, I'll say Kansas City takes that game. Then we have the London game, the Jaguars home away from home, if you will. I think they'll take care of business against the Atlanta Falcons. Then we have the Rams and the Colts. Think Sean McVay is going to be able to rally his team to victory, come up with a solid game plan there. Then another Sean Payton. Think he'll be able to take care of the Chicago Bears with relative ease. Though I do think the Bears will be better than last year. I don't think they'll be the worst team like they were last year, though. I don't necessarily believe they'll be competing for the NFC North, though maybe if Justin Fields really overachieves, that could be a potential reality. Then we have New England against Dallas. Again, I think Dallas is going to have a very strong season this year. And I don't think New England's bad by any means. It's just been a tough schedule to start. So even though I have them 0-4 here, it will improve. I do think they'll rebound from this. They have strong players in the trenches on both sides of the ball. So I'm definitely not going to discount what New England has to bring to the table here. Then over on the NFC side of things, we've got Detroit against Green Bay on a Thursday night. Say Detroit takes this one. Like I said, Jordan Love's going to have to learn a little bit here early on. Victories aren't going to come so easy, but I do think Green Bay is going to be hanging around here as we go along through the season. I don't think they are a bad team by any stretch of the imagination. Then we have Carolina against Minnesota. Minnesota is going to finally pick up that first win. Eagles against the Commanders at home. The Eagles did lose to the Commanders at home last year. I don't believe they make that same mistake again this year. Another divisional matchup here with the Bucs and the Saints. I think Tampa Bay takes this one. Arizona and San Fran, that's a gimme. And then the Giants against the Seattle Seahawks. This might be an interesting game here. I feel like that these two teams might be relatively evenly matched up, but I'll actually go with Seattle here on the Monday night game to cap off week 4. So now we're heading firmly into October here. The standings are looking a little interesting. We've got Baltimore undefeated, the Chargers undefeated, the Kansas City Chiefs undefeated. We have the Philadelphia Eagles, the Dallas Cowboys, and the San Francisco 49ers all undefeated. So things are looking interesting here as we're pushing along to week 5. Now we got another London game here. Again, the Jaguars at their home away from home, but I don't think it's enough. The Buffalo Bills are going to win this one. Then we have Tennessee against the Indianapolis Colts. Tennessee's just a very well-coached team, even if they may not have the talent this year. I do think they'll be able to pull this game out. I have questions about Tennessee on the offensive line, even though they added Andre Dillard in free agency and Peter Skoronski in the draft. And they did sign DeAndre Hopkins, but we'll see. They are still starting Ryan Tannehill. And they do still have Derrick Henry, but he's in a contract year. Maybe he'll come out and play well. So we'll see. I don't know if they necessarily end up winning this division over the Jaguars, but I think they win this game. Then we have an interesting matchup here, Steelers and the Ravens. This would actually be for first place in the AFC North if things shake out how it does so far here, but this one's in Pittsburgh. And you know what? Let's get a little bit crazy. I'll give this to the Steelers. I think Mike Tomlin's going to have the guys get up for this game. Um, Maybe the offense is going to take a little bit of a step forward here with Kenny Pickett, George Pickens, Najee Harris. I think he's definitely primed to have a bounce back season here in year 3. And I think that defense is going to be just as solid as well. I think Pittsburgh's built themselves a really well-rounded roster personnel-wise, and they're definitely not a team to be slept on this year. Absolutely not. This division is definitely one of the stronger ones in the NFL. But moving along, this is the Jets and the Broncos matchup. I know a lot of trash talk's been going back and forth between these two teams, but I think the Jets come into Denver with a purpose, and they're going to come out with a W. So the Jets will go to 3-2. Denver will also be 3-2 now. Miami against the Giants. I'll take the Dolphins in this one. Miami's defense is going to be too much for little Danny Dimes, and Miami's offense is going to be just too explosive for the Giants' defense to keep up. Atlanta versus Houston. This is a bit of a cellar dweller matchup from last year, but we'll take Atlanta here. Houston's definitely in a rebuilding phase right now, though I am very impressed with what they did in the draft, moving up to take Will Anderson at number 3. New Orleans versus New England. Bill Belichick's finally going to get his first win of the season against the Saints. Bengals versus Cardinals. We'll go Bengals. Kansas City Chiefs, you can just keep it rolling against Minnesota. And then Green Bay coming off a little bit of rest against the Las Vegas Raiders on a Monday night. We'll go with Green Bay. So Green Bay is going to get back in the win column with a 3-2 record. And they're right there for that NFC North lead still here after week 5. We do have few more games still, though. Chicago against Washington. I'll take Washington in that one. Carolina against the Detroit Lions. Again, I'll go with Detroit. So now Detroit's in the driver's seat in that division, but Green Bay is still very much right there. And I don't think Minnesota's going to be sticking down here for too long. They're definitely going to start to pile some wins together. Eagles against the Rams. I'll take the Eagles here. And then Dallas against the San Francisco 49ers, rematch of the divisional round last year. And I'll actually take the Dallas Cowboys. They're going to hand San Fran their first loss of the season. Dallas's defense is definitely not a force to be overlooked. And like I said with San Francisco's offensive line earlier, I am not entirely sold on that offensive line, especially if they don't get that quarterback situation figured out. But who knows? Maybe Trey Lance comes in here this year and lights the world on fire, or Brock Purdy isn't out as long as we anticipate. Possibly even Sam Darnold's able to get himself a bit of a rebound season, but let's not talk too crazy. Moving on to week 6. Thursday night, Kansas City against Denver. Kansas City's going to just keep on going. They're going to go 6-0 at home here. I really think they're coming out with a purpose this year. They're really looking to go for it again. Baltimore against Tennessee. Again, Baltimore I think is just the better team. This one's in London. Jacksonville against the Colts, a divisional matchup. This might be a little bit closer than people might expect. All division games always are. Same with this Denver and Kansas City game, honestly. But Jacksonville's going to hang on to get a win here. Then we have New England versus Vegas. I'll take New England. This is a rematch of that very bizarre ending last year where the Patriots had the ball with a tie game and with regulation winding down, and they just kind of gave the ball away and the Raiders ran it back for a touchdown. So they're not going to make that same mistake again. New England's going to take this one in Vegas. Moving on to the interconference games. Miami's going to take Carolina here. I do like Miami this year. I don't know if they end up winning that AFC East. I think that's going to be very competitive, but they're definitely going to be in the mix for a playoff spot like they were last year. Seattle against Green Bay. Seattle coming off of their actual bye. That's what this little black icon is supposed to represent. And you know what? Seattle might just pull this off. Seattle might just pull this off going into Cincinnati. This is only week 6 still, so Joe Burrow should be back by this point if he even misses any time, but we'll give Seattle the win here, though. Definitely not going to count out the Bengals. They'll be back. Don't worry about that. San Francisco against the Cleveland Browns. And here, I think Browns are also coming off of a bye. This one might be a little bit closer than people think, too. I know this might be a slam dunk for the Browns in a lot of people's minds, but I'm sorry, slam dunk for the 49ers, rather, in a lot of people's opinions, but I might actually give this one to the Cleveland Browns at home. The NFL is just a very any given Sunday league. I love what the Browns have on both sides in the trenches right now. I think they have a strong secondary as well, so it might just be a little bit too hot to handle if for Brock Purdy or whoever's under center for San Francisco this week. Then New Orleans versus Houston. And here, this is another interesting one. So I think this could definitely go either way. I might give this to the Houston Texans to give them their first win of the season. I don't think they'll be a bad team at all, especially if CJ Stroud's able to overachieve. We'll see. Ohio State quarterbacks haven't had an amazing track record in the NFL, and no, I don't necessarily want to include Joe Burrow in that argument because he did finish up at LSU, and that's definitely what prepared him for what he would become in the NFL, I would say. So then we have the Jets and the Eagles. I'll keep it going with the Eagles. I don't think the Jets are going to have a bad season by any means, but I think the Eagles are just, their time is now. They're very, very well rounded as a team. Um, just dominant. They might have the best offensive line and the best defensive line, which is very, very crazy to think about, but that's a recipe for success, especially when you have the secondary that they have and the quarterback, obviously, the receivers that they have. Just an all around great package for the Eagles. Of course, injuries are always a concern for all of these teams, and that's why this is all just for fun. Once we actually get to October 12th here, these standings are probably going to look much different. There's going to be so many more injuries. I'm sure these rosters are going to look much different. The outlooks for these team seasons are going to look a lot different. So time will tell. It always does. So moving on here to the Bills and the Giants, we'll go with the Buffalo Bills. And then down at the bottom here, Chargers against the Dallas Cowboys. And these are two undefeated teams at this point, so this will be very interesting. Almost said San Diego again. The Chargers are coming off of their bye here on a Monday night, so I might give this one to the Chargers. Justin Herbert's going to outduel Dak Prescott on ESPN there and get the win. Washington against Atlanta. Washington coming off of the Thursday night. We'll give Washington the win here. And then Tampa Bay against Detroit. This will be a good game too, I'm sure. But Tampa Bay coming off of their bye week, they're 3-1 right now. Detroit's already 4-1. We'll give this one to Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay's going to improve to 4-1, firmly establishing themselves in the driver's seat for the NFC South, while Detroit's still definitely doing fine in the NFC North, but they have Green Bay breathing down their neck right here, and I think Minnesota is going to be creeping up as well here with a win over Chicago. Then wrapping it up with the NFC West, Arizona, poor Arizona. They're going to fall to 0-6, losing to Sean McVay and the Los Angeles Rams. I do think the Rams are kind of the equivalent of maybe the Denver Broncos in the NFC, although I do think Denver probably has a slightly better roster, but these were two teams that had a rough go about it last year. Didn't have their first round pick this year, and I think they will still take a slight step forward this year. Maybe not playoff teams, but a slight step forward. So right along here to week 7, we've got AFC East matchup of the Bills and Patriots. Buffalo's going to keep that going. Cleveland against the Colts. We'll take the Browns on the road. And then this will be a fun matchup. The Los Angeles Chargers against the Kansas City Chiefs, two undefeated teams. Seems like it's always a fantastic matchup when these two teams play. Honestly, anytime these guys play, it should be a primetime game, but we'll go with the Chiefs and Arrowhead here. Although maybe when they match up later in the season, the Chargers are able to take that one in LA. Moving on to the interconference games, Jags and the Saints. We'll go Jags. Detroit against Baltimore. take Baltimore there. I think Baltimore has a very well-rounded team this year, like I mentioned earlier. They're going to just take care of business against Detroit, though this could be a very fun game to watch as well. The Raiders against the Bears. These are two teams that have yet to get a win, two of the only teams that have yet to get a win. I'll go with Justin Fields and the Bears here. I think they're going to pull this one out, though. The Raiders aren't going to be maybe as bad as the record suggests. It's just such a great league this year. So many wonderful teams with just amazing talent. So nothing against the Raiders here. I'm not a huge fan of what they did in the offseason, losing Darren Waller for really not a whole lot, and kind of just kicking Derek Carr to the curb after he wore his heart on his sleeve for that organization for so many years, and bringing in Jimmy Garoppolo on a waiver. He wasn't even able to clear his physical, so that's definitely a cause for concern. If Jimmy G goes down to injury early and they don't have a solid backup plan in place, things could get very ugly very quickly for Vegas. Steelers coming off the bye here against the Rams. Mike Tomlin's going to get the win over Sean McVay on the road. Packers against the Broncos. This could be a fun matchup. Packers off their bye. Broncos coming off of a Thursday night. You know what? We'll go with Denver here. I think experience is just going to triumph here against the Green Bay Packers, though. Like I said, I think Green Bay is going to be hanging around here in the NFC when all's said and done. Sunday night game this week, Dolphins and the Eagles. This will be another very fun one. The matchup of Tua Tagovailoa versus Jalen Hurts. Of course, these were both guys who played for Alabama, and infamously, Tua was to come into relief at halftime for Jalen Hurts of the national championship game and rally them to victory. So I'll take Jalen Hurts here. I do think the Eagles are just the better team here. Although this will be a very fun matchup, and definitely as an Eagles fan looking forward to this one. Atlanta Falcons and the Tampa Bay Bucks. We'll go with Tampa Bay. I think Tampa Bay is definitely going to surprise some people this year. I don't know if they're going to run away with the division as much as it appears right now, but I definitely think they'll be in the driver's seat for most of the season. NFC East battle here between the Giants and the Commanders. We'll go with the Giants, give them their second win. Seems like it's always a close matchup when these two teams play, so definitely look forward to this one as well. Seattle against Arizona, that's an easy one. Seattle, and then San Fran against Minnesota. We will go with San Francisco. So now we are on to Week 8. In Week 8 here, we're starting out with AFC yet again. Jacksonville against the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'll give this one to Jacksonville. They'll improve to 6-2. Pittsburgh will drop to 5-2. Miami against New England. I think Miami will be able to take this one. Then Kansas City against Denver yet again. This could be a potential trap game for the Kansas City Chiefs, although I do think Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes will figure it out and be able to rally to victory to start off 8-0, so that's definitely something to keep an eye on there. Buffalo on the Thursday night game at home against Tampa Bay. Buffalo's going to hand Tampa Bay their second loss of the season. They'll drop to 5-2. Houston against Carolina. This is going to be the matchup of C.J. Stroud and Bryce Young, the number 1 pick and the number 2 pick. In this case, I do think that the Carolina Panthers will win this one, so Bryce Young will get that first win against his draft mate, C.J. Stroud. Well, I guess it's a win over the number 2 and number 3 overall picks with Will Anderson there as well. And then we've got the duel at the air conditioner here between Aaron Rodgers and Daniel Jones at MetLife Stadium. Aaron Rodgers coming off the bye. We'll take the Jets in this one. I think they're definitely just the all-around better team. Love their secondary. Sauce Gardner, what else can you say? He might even get a pick or two here against Daniel Jones. And then, of course, Aaron Rodgers to Garrett Wilson will be a very fun connection to watch. Breece Hall should be back and healthy by this point, so both teams should have a solid presence on the ground. This could be another fun one. The Saints and the Colts. I'll actually go with the Indianapolis Colts in this one. For a while this summer, I was very high on the New Orleans Saints, but as you can see, that stance has obviously changed. I don't know if they're going to end up being this poor in the standings when all said and done, but I do think it's going to be a rough go about them for them this year. Although if this division ends up being wide open, maybe they could see a route here to get themselves back into contention, snag that 4 seed or 3 seed, whatever this shakes out to be when all's said and done. Then we got Atlanta versus Tennessee. We'll give Tennessee a win here, coming off the bye week. Mike Vrabel's going to have these guys ready to go at home against Atlanta. And Atlanta's, I mean, they're nothing special. Um, Desmond Ridder, I am not a fan of him at all as a quarterback. I think he honestly might be the worst quarterback in the league. Yeah, maybe even more so than Colt McCoy, honestly. I'm just not a fan of how he plays the position. I was not impressed at all with him watching him last year. Although they do have Bijan Robinson, and that'll, if I were Atlanta's coaching staff, I would build the offense through the running game for sure. Cleveland against the Seattle Seahawks. In this one, I will take the Cleveland Browns. And then moving along to the Ravens and the Arizona Cardinals. That's another easy one. Not that this was easy. This will probably be a pretty good game, but I think Cleveland's able to just eke that one out on the road. Cincinnati coming off of the bye. I think they pull off the upset here against San Francisco. I really do. I love what they bring to the table. They have that winning culture. Not that San Francisco is a bad team by any means. Obviously, they're now 5-3. I just don't know if they're going to be running through teams like they were last year. The same thing with Minnesota. Moving along, Chargers are going to get a win here. Same with the Lions at home. I don't really think these are too contentious. Then the NFC matchups here, we've got the Philadelphia Eagles against the Washington Commanders. I think they win this one as well. And I know might be some homer bias here with the Eagles 8-0, but believe me, the Eagles' schedule is going to get much tougher as we get into November here. Now moving on with the NFC North battle here between the Vikings and Packers. This is where the Vikings start to climb back into contention. So the Vikings are going to go on the road and beat the Packers here. So they're going to be 3-5. They're definitely within striking distance of Detroit, only at 5-3. And Green Bay's still right there too. And honestly, if Chicago is able to catch fire at some point, they could be in the mix as well. Then to round out Week 8, we will go with Dallas coming off of the bye at home against the Rams. So Dallas is right there with the Eagles as well. It could be very similar to last season in the NFC East. All right, so now we're at Week 9, so this is just about the midway point of the season. Starting off here, we have a Thursday night battle between Tennessee Titans and the Pittsburgh Steelers, two very well-coached teams. Mike Tomlin against Mike Vrabel. I think Pittsburgh's going to pull this one out at home. I really do. I think Pittsburgh, like I mentioned, I'm a big fan of their offseason. I think they're going to really turn some heads this year. And they might even surprise some people and make the playoffs in the AFC. But AFC just has so many tremendous teams. I'll be interested to see how that shakes out. Kansas City against Miami and Germany. We'll go with Kansas City again. Then the matchup from Divisional Round last year between the Buffalo Bills and the Cincinnati Bengals, Josh Allen against Joe Burrow. This could be a very entertaining game, but Cincinnati at this point is going to need this win a lot more. Bengals might be a little bit hungrier. I know Buffalo's going to have a little bit of extra rest, but Cincinnati's going to take this one at home. Then Justin Herbert going on the road to take on Aaron Rodgers and the Jets. This could be a very fun game as well. This one, let's see. So Chargers are 6-1. The Jets are 4-3. Honestly, the Chargers, I do think the Chargers have a very well-rounded roster. They'll pull this out on a Monday night, even on the road. Moving along, New England and Washington. I'll give this one to New England. I think New England does have a pretty well-rounded roster. Maybe not the flashiest roster you'd like to see, but they have talent in places where maybe the media might not talk about as much. They're not one of the best offensive and defensive lines, but they're strong. They have a good presence there. They're going to be able to give Mac Jones some time, and they're going to be able to get pressure on Sam Howell or Jacoby Brissett or whoever Washington decides to put out there at quarterback, especially against Washington's offensive line, which I'm not a fan of. I think New England takes care of business relatively easily here. Same with Cleveland against Arizona. Then we've got a fun matchup here, Seattle and Baltimore. Honestly, you know what? Seattle could go in there and rattle the cage for Baltimore a little bit. They're riding pretty high at 7-1. They'll drop to 7-2, and this actually puts Seattle in the driver's seat in the NFC West. Although I'm not sure that'll necessarily last. I am a fan of what Seattle did this offseason, but like I mentioned earlier, just have a lot of questions with them in the trenches. And as we get into the later weeks of this season, that definitely could catch up with them. So Tampa Bay against Houston, give that one to Tampa. Then the battle of the fourth overall pick versus the first overall pick here. Battle of two former Eagles offensive coordinators, Frank Reich and Shane Steichen. I will go with the Carolina Panthers in this one. They'll improve to 3-5, whereas Indianapolis Colts will drop to 2-7. And Anthony Richardson is definitely a very young quarterback, definitely a very raw quarterback. I don't think if they have a rough year this year, that's any sort of reflection on how he's going to have as an NFL player. I think he could definitely have a very strong career ahead of him still, even if he doesn't have an amazing rookie season. Then Giants against the Raiders. You know what? We'll give the Raiders a win here. I do think the Giants will be better than 2-7 when all's said and done. Better than that record reflects when the season's all said and done. But I also think 0-8's a little bit much for the Raiders, so they might come out hungry and win this game. Minnesota against Atlanta. We'll give this one to Minnesota. This is where they might, like, their schedule's going to definitely ease up here a little bit, and they'll start to climb their way back into the NFC North standings. Atlanta's definitely a team they're capable of beating. Chicago against New Orleans. We'll say New Orleans wins this one. Gives them, where are they at here? They'll be 2-7 now. So they might start to pile together a couple wins here. Los Angeles Rams against the Green Bay Packers. Green Bay's 3-4, LA's 2-6. LA could go on the road here and win this game. They're absolutely capable of that. And then big Sunday matchup here between the Cowboys and Eagles. This might even be a Sunday. I don't think this is a Sunday night matchup, though. It definitely should be if it's not. Eagles against the Cowboys. And you know what? This just might be where the Eagles get that first loss. It very well may be. So we'll give this one to Dallas here. Moving along to Week 10. Now we have the Browns against the Ravens. This one would potentially be for first in the AFC North. We'll say Lamar takes care of business at home, John Harbaugh and company. And then we got the Bengals and the Texans. That's another pretty easy one. I think New England's able to start piling together a couple of wins here. Then we have the New York Jets against the Las Vegas Raiders. Raiders coming off of that first win last week, but the Jets will take this one here. Jets will improve to 5-4. Then Denver Broncos coming off of the bye against the Buffalo Bills. Buffalo's going to win this one, so Buffalo improves to 8-2. Then San Francisco against Jacksonville Jaguars coming off of the bye. And then we have, both of these teams coming off of the bye actually. So Jacksonville's 6-2, while San Francisco's 5-3. So I'll say San Francisco wins this one. Tennessee against the Tampa Bay Bucks. So Tennessee takes this on the road as well. They're a very well-coached team. Tampa Bay, I definitely have some questions about their coaching staff and how their offense is run. Do like their offensive line still. Do like the talent they have at receiver still. I like their defense still, but I think Tennessee's going to be able to get this one. They'll be coming into this game prepared. Let's see. Green Bay against the Pittsburgh Steelers. This will probably be a good game as well. Green Bay's definitely starting to taper off here a little bit in the standings. And Pittsburgh's right in the thick of things. And Pittsburgh, honestly, they might just keep it going. They can win this game at home. And they'll be right breathing down the Baltimore Ravens' neck here for first place in the AFC North. Detroit Lions coming off the bye against the Los Angeles Chargers. This will be another really fun game to watch. Two very, very exciting offenses. And I'll actually say Detroit can take this. They definitely can take this game. I wouldn't be surprised at all if the Los Angeles Chargers did win this game, but I don't think this is a game Detroit's. The Chargers shouldn't overlook Detroit in this game. They're definitely capable of winning it. How about that? I'll put it that way. So Los Angeles will fall to 7-2. Detroit will improve to 6-3. Moving along with the NFC games here on the right. Thursday night game between the Bears and the Panthers. Justin Fields will get another win under his belt here. They're definitely due for one. They'll improve to 2-8, whereas Carolina will fall to 3-6. Saints against the Vikings. Like I said earlier, Minnesota is going to start putting together some wins. They'll improve to 5-5, so they're technically in the playoff picture now with the 7th seed. That's what these numbers here represent. Their place in the conference as a whole. Likewise over here. So now we have Atlanta versus Arizona. And you know what? We'll give Arizona a win here. I don't think Arizona's going to go 0-17. Um, that's just not the way the National Football League shakes out a lot of times. And Atlanta's a vulnerable team for sure. They're 2-8 here. I think they're better than that record shows, but they do definitely have some question marks. Like I said, not a fan of Desmond Ridder. And if Kyler Murray's back by this point, this is week 10, mid-November, we'll see. But he might not be back till December. Even with Colt McCoy in there, he might be able to pull out a victory at home. This could be like a shootout kind of game. Absolutely. Giants against the Cowboys. Dallas takes care of them, relative ease, even though it's a divisional game. And then Washington against Seattle. Seattle pulls that game out. So now we are on to Week 11. Week 11 here we have Baltimore against the Cincinnati Bengals. This is where Joe Burr is going to start to emerge here. Starts rallying the troops here on Thursday night. This is a big game for them, even though they were last in the standings going into this week in the AFC North, and not even in the playoff picture at 6-3. This win would immediately propel them to 7-3, back into the wild card spot, and they would be right there for the division lead with the Steelers and the Baltimore Ravens. And we also have another AFC North game coming up here in a second. Give that one to Miami real quick and we'll jump right into this. So Pittsburgh versus Cleveland. This will be another really exciting game. Honestly, we'll give this one to Cleveland just because why not? This will keep things really interesting in the division here. This is a game the Browns might, at home, the dog pound's going to be coming out. That building's going to be rocking, especially with the Steelers coming into town. Longtime hated rival of the Cleveland Browns. And man, that could be a really exciting win for them, much like when they won against the Pittsburgh Steelers in the playoffs a couple of years ago. But this one will be at home, so this will be very exciting for their fans. Tennessee against Jacksonville. Honestly, Tennessee can win this game. They're definitely capable of winning this game. Divisional matchups are always just a wild card. You never know with the same division matchups. So even though Jacksonville's probably the better team, you can't discount Tennessee. Mike Vrabel always has these guys ready to play. Can never overlook them. Then another divisional matchup here with the Jets and Bills. This one could be very fascinating. So I believe in week 1, I gave this matchup to the New York Jets at home. So week 11 in Buffalo, Buffalo's going to take care of business. They'll improve to 9-2. Now we have a matchup with the Arizona Cardinals and the Houston Texans. The team that was supposed to pick number 3 against the team that actually picked number 3. They worked out that trade with each other. So I'll give this one to the Houston Texans. This is a good opportunity for them to pick up a win. There's not many teams I can say the Houston Texans are better than, but I do believe that the Arizona Cardinals are one of them. They're one of the few teams I think the Houston Texans can look at, especially at home, and be like, yes, we can beat these guys. Moving along with the Chargers against the Packers. I think the Chargers take this game. Things are definitely starting to become troublesome in Green Bay here. 3-7 record, though. I don't think that's going to necessarily last. Minnesota against Denver. I'll give this one to Denver out in Mile High Stadium. So Denver's staying in the playoff picture here. Well, not in the playoff picture, but in the hunt for the playoff picture, rather, at 5-5, while Minnesota is going to fall to 5-6, still hanging on to that 7 seed for now. We'll come back to this one. Detroit against Chicago. Detroit will take that. Dallas will take care of business against the Carolina Panthers. Washington against the New York Giants. I believe I gave this to, the Giants last time. Man, I don't want to make the Giants 2-9, but I think they probably split against these guys. So, you know what? We'll give this to the Giants. They'll both go to 3-8. I do think the Giants will start to string together a couple wins as we get down the stretch here. It'll be interesting because the Giants were a playoff team last year, and this is why we do this, because the fascinating thing with the NFL is there's always teams that make the playoffs the year before that miss, and there's always teams that miss the playoffs that make it. Giants very well may be that team in the NFC this year, though I don't think they necessarily end up near the bottom of the standings. Tampa Bay against San Francisco. This will be a fun matchup. I think San Francisco is going to start to come into their own here. They're going to win against Tampa Bay, which now Tampa Bay, I mean, they're only 6-4, so if one of these teams down here is able to start getting hot, I mean, that division's definitely still within reach. Then we have the Rams coming off a bye against the Seattle Seahawks in LA. Man, I really want to give this game to the Rams, but you know what? I do. I'll keep it with Seattle. I will. I think Seattle takes this one on the road, even though the Rams will definitely make this a close game. This could be an exciting one. All right, now on to Week 12. So Week 12 here, who do we have to start off? Maybe we'll start on the NFC this side, shake things up a little bit. So Thursday night, well, this is actually Thanksgiving week, I suppose. All three of these games are Thursday, so yeah, that makes sense. This will be the first game for probably around 12:30, 4:30, and then the primetime game. And, oh, this will be an interesting one. So Green Bay against Detroit. You know what? Green Bay's going to win this one. Green Bay's going to say, stop the presses. We're still in this thing. Detroit just has a way on Thanksgiving of sometimes like just losing these games. It's unfortunate. Glad they get that Thanksgiving game though every year. There's not much that the Detroit fan base can hang their hat on. I know some people are of the opinion that, oh well, it's not really fair. Other teams should be able to host that Thanksgiving game. I like Detroit gets to keep that. It's something nice for their fan base. They don't really get a lot of that. Then we have Dallas against the Washington Commanders here. I'll give this one to Dallas. I think they're just going to keep on steamrolling here. Then, oh, you know what? I completely forgot about this game. So, Eagles against the Chiefs on a Monday night. Both of these teams coming off of their bye. Super Bowl rematch from last year. I'm actually giving this one to the Kansas City Chiefs. I know, crazy to say, even as an Eagles fan, but I'll give this one to the Kansas City Chiefs. If people out there don't know, since Andy Reid left the Eagles for the Kansas City Chiefs, in the four matchups they have played in 2013, 2017, 2021, and of course Super Bowl 57, the Kansas City Chiefs won all four of those matchups. So that I don't see why that wouldn't continue here. Eagles are of course a very talented team, but if there's one team that is arguably better than them, it is of course the Kansas City Chiefs. So back to Week 12. We have this big heavyweight matchup here between the Seahawks and the San Francisco 49ers. San Fran's going to say, hold on, this is our division. We're going to take this victory here Thanksgiving night in front of the whole country and show that the NFC West is ours for the taking. Now moving along with Atlanta and New Orleans here. Both 2-8 teams actually, coming off of their bye weeks. I'll say Atlanta wins this one at home. No disrespect to New Orleans, of course. I think this could be another interesting game. Interdivision games always are. Intra-division games always are. So then another one down here with the Rams and the Cardinals. Rams are just the better team here. Then the Vikings and the Bears. Vikings will take that one as well. So Minnesota's climbing back up to 6-6. The Rams, where are the Rams at? Rams are 4-7. They're only the 8 seed, so like they're not out of this by any stretch of the imagination. And they just won the Super Bowl 2 years ago now, so they have that winning culture, and they have some veteran players, Matthew Stafford, Aaron Donald, who want to try to make one more run before their time is up. So now in the interconference matchups here, the Patriots and the Giants. My gosh, like this is one of those ones again, like both of these teams need this win for sure. This is the beauty of the National Football League, though. Somebody has to win, somebody has to lose. That's the nature of it. I'll give this one to Bill Belichick coming off the bye. Drops the New York Giants to 3-9, and the New England Patriots improved to 5-6. So, yeah, remember how they had that rough start? Definitely starting to get it together here. The Indianapolis Colts against the Tampa Bay Bucks. Tampa Bay should be able to win this one with relative ease. And the Carolina Panthers against the Tennessee Titans. You know what? I'll say Carolina wins this one. I do think Carolina has a more talented roster than people might really assume just looking at them at first glance. They did have the number one overall pick this past year, but you have to remember they traded for it. They were, I believe, originally the ninth worst team in the league last year, so they have some pieces in place. They have a quarterback in place now, so if he could start to really find some stability, starts learning the offense here as we get later in the season, I think a team like Tennessee is. This is a good measuring stick game for Carolina. This is a game where Tennessee isn't a bad team by any stretch of the imagination, but being able to win this game against a well-coached team is definitely something to be proud of. Then we have the Philadelphia Eagles against the Buffalo Bills here. I'll give this one to the Eagles at home. Link's going to be absolutely jacked for this game. Josh Allen coming to town. Former Eagles coach Sean McDermott on the sidelines. This will be a fun one. I think Eagles will take this one. They need this one to hang with Dallas right now. And Buffalo, even with the loss, is still comfortably atop their division. So speaking of that division, we've got the Dolphins and the Jets. So for this one, this is a Friday night game. That's interesting. I'll say that this is the Black Friday game. That's right. I think the Jets win this one at home. This could be another really entertaining game. So both the Jets and the Dolphins will now be 6-5, with the Patriots right there at 5-6. All three below the playoff line at this point in time. Now, this is where Joe Burrow is going to continue to catch momentum. Big divisional matchup here against the Steelers. Bengals are going to win that one at home to improve to 8-3. Then we have Jaguars can beat the Texans. Browns against the Broncos. This could go either way. You know what? Let me take a look real quick. Think the. You know what? We'll give this one to the Broncos. I do. I think Denver could win this game at home. Be a tough environment for Browns to come into on the road. Bronco Nation's going to be pumped up for that one. Mile High is going to be all excited. Definitely always a tough atmosphere for any athlete to go into and play. So Denver Broncos are going to win this one. So they'll be 6-5, but still 11th in the AFC. It just goes to show how strong the AFC is this year. Moving along, Kansas City Chiefs against the Oakland Raiders, the Las Vegas Raiders, excuse me. The Kansas City Chiefs should be able to take this one, so they improved to 11-0. Definitely something to keep an eye on. The only undefeated team left. But I believe they still have to play the Buffalo Bills and the Cincinnati Bengals and the Los Angeles Chargers again, so I don't know if that 17-0 season's even a remote possibility. Then finally, to wrap up Week 12 here, we've got the Ravens against the Chargers. This will be a really exciting game too. Two of the better teams in the AFC for sure. Baltimore's going to need this game, especially if this shakes out this way, because if they lose this game, Cincinnati will be in the driver's seat in the AFC North, and I think that's how it shakes out. I think Los Angeles is going to win because they also need this game to stay atop the wild card spot here. Crazy that they're 9-2 and they could be atop pretty much any one of these divisions, but they play in the same one as Kansas City. I'm fascinated to see how they do come playoff time, because they had that heartbreaker last year to the Jaguars, but I really do feel that they're one of the strongest teams in the AFC. So now we're on to week 13, excuse me. Start in the middle here. Dolphins against Washington. Miami's going to take care of business here. They're just simply the better team. Same with Pittsburgh against Arizona, as with the Jets against the Falcons. Cleveland against the Rams. This one could go either way for sure, but you know what? I'll give it to Cleveland. I do think they have just a little bit more talent on their team, and they're such a wild card this year too. If Deshaun Watson can get his act together, they have a strong offensive line. They have a strong enough defense. I like their secondary. I like, of course, Nick Chubb. He's always there, always performing. If he's able to stay healthy, I know they did lose Kareem Hunt, but the Browns are hanging around here. They're still below the playoff line, but 8-4, definitely nothing to be upset about at all. Kansas City Chiefs against the Packers. Chiefs take it again, and that's just an unfortunate break for the Packers. They're now 4-8, but while I do like the Packers this year, they're not as good as the Chiefs. On the AFC side, let's go with Chargers take care of business against New England. Colts against the Titans. Titans take that one. Broncos and the Texans. Broncos should be able to win that one. And the Bengals and the Jaguars. The Bengals should be able to take this game. So now Cincinnati is firmly in the driver's seat. See how quickly that changes. Bengals started out 0-2 and now they're 9-3. Seems a lot like last year, right? Over here on the NFC side, so we've got Carolina and Tampa Bay. This could be interesting because Carolina kind of needs this game to keep this division relevant. And you know what? I think they're definitely capable of doing that. They need this game to stay in it, keep Tampa Bay on their toes. Tampa Bay should still be able to win this division at this point, but this will at least keep it interesting. This will keep Carolina in the mix here. They're definitely going to get up for this game going on the road there against their division opponent. Detroit against New Orleans. Detroit should be able to win this, so New Orleans is really having a rough go about it. And let me look at their schedule because it seems like they've had a lot of tough matchups. So let's see here. They go... I mean, I really don't think that's unfair. I mean, New Orleans could definitely win some of these games here. Like, they could probably beat... Like, they could definitely beat Houston. They could definitely beat the Colts. They could definitely beat the Panthers. But I don't know. I do have a lot of question marks with that New Orleans Saints roster right now. Not a lot of confidence in them on the trenches on either side. Derek Carr, I mean, I know he's firmly like an above average quarterback, but I don't have a ton of faith in him to really elevate that roster. I think he's the kind of guy who needs a good roster around him to really have some success in the win column. So, moving along, I think the Eagles can take care of the 49ers. I know the 49ers are going to be amped for this game, but the Lynx going to be rocking for that one, the NFC Championship rematch. I know Jalen Hurts is definitely going to get up for that game. Then we have Seattle against Dallas. This will be a fun one too. And honestly, this might be where the Eagles can creep back into that. This could be the week where the Eagles can take over the NFC East and Seattle could take back over the NFC West. So if Seattle could pull that game off Thursday night against Dallas, that definitely sets the stage for Sunday where the Eagles could take over against the 49ers. But at the same time, the 49ers are going to need that game too to topple the Seahawks. So this will be an interesting week for both of those divisions for sure. All right, week 14. We're now in December. So we'll start over here on the AFC side. We got a great coaching matchup here between two Hall of Famers, Bill Belichick and Mike Tomlin on Thursday night. Patriots sitting at 5-7, Steelers sitting at 8-4. And man, this game could really go either way. But you know what? I'll give this one to the Steelers, just because they're the home team, honestly. And this is probably where New England's starting to face the music that, yeah, they're probably not a playoff team this year, which is unfortunate. Maybe New England's able to win this game because of that fact, but that might be it for Bill Belichick if they end up missing the playoffs this year. So this is definitely a game to keep an eye on if we're in a similar scenario to right now. Now we have Jacksonville against the Browns. I think the Browns could win this one, honestly. Going into Cleveland in December, it's going to be chilly for sure. Doug Peterson and the Jags, they're more of a warm weather team, absolutely. I do like Cleveland in the trenches more than I like Jacksonville. And Deshaun Watson, if he's able to play his potential, he could be just as good as Trevor Lawrence. We've seen him perform in the NFL before. Has been a little bit, definitely has been a little bit since we've seen that, but Deshaun Watson can be a good NFL quarterback, absolutely. Jets against the Texans, easy one. Same with the Bengals over the Colts. Then, man, the Bills and the Chiefs, this will be a fun one. This might be where Kansas City gets their first loss coming off of a bye here for Buffalo. I think that might be the case. Kansas City's going to drop to 12-1. Then we have Denver against the Chargers. Chargers need to win this game because they're looking at this like, man, we could catch Kansas City here potentially for that division lead, maybe even the 1 seed in the AFC. Could you imagine all this talk about the Kansas City Chiefs, the Cincinnati Bengals, the Buffalo Bills, even some hype around teams like the Jaguars and the Jets, but don't count out the Chargers. Do not count out the Chargers. And looking at their schedule here real quick, like these are winnable games for them. These aren't, it's not like I'm saying they're going to win a ton of upsets here. They could take care of the Dolphins. Like the wins here I have the Dolphins, Titans, Vikings, Raiders, Cowboys, that'll be a tough one. Bears, Jets could be a tough one. Packers, Patriots, these are all winnable games for the LA Chargers, Denver Broncos, and the only losses I have them with so far are to the Kansas City Chiefs and the Detroit Lions coming off of the bye week for them. So I think this is very, very reasonable for them to finish this way. And then the remainder of their schedule here doesn't really get too much more difficult. With the Raiders, I mean, the Bills will be a tough one for sure, and the Chiefs, but 2 divisional games there with the Raiders and Broncos they're capable of winning. Should be a fascinating finish for them. Then we have the Titans and the Dolphins. Dolphins should be able to take this one. Dolphins need that win to hang on in the AFC playoff picture. This is where Tennessee's kind of starting to realize a wild card's no longer a possibility yet again. If they're making the playoffs, they need to beat Jacksonville here. They need to get that division win. So Ravens coming off the bye against the Rams. Baltimore should win this one. Now the LA Rams are 4-9, so another rough go about it for the Rams this year. It's going to be tough for them to make the playoffs at this point, but hey, Minnesota's the 7th seed, and they're still only 6-6, but we'll actually make that 7-6. They come off the bye against the Raiders, who are also coming off of their bye, and get that win. A rough season for the Raiders here. It seems like they also have a tough schedule too. Yeah, just a rough go about it for the Raiders this year. I mean, honestly, if there's they do need a top pick next year. Like that wouldn't be the worst thing in the world for them. It could really help them turn their franchise around. Because they're kind of just stuck in neutral right now, in my opinion. They went in all in, it seemed like last year with Devontae Adams, and just didn't work out for them. NFC over here, we've got Tampa Bay against Atlanta. You know what? Atlanta could win this game. This will keep it interesting in the NFC South. I don't think Atlanta's a bad team by any stretch of the imagination. And likewise, I think even though Carolina's probably looking at Tampa Bay here, just the way the NFL shakes out, going into the Superdome, New Orleans is going to play spoiler here, take the Panthers out of playoff contention, at least for right now. And Chicago coming off of the bye against Detroit. Chicago could potentially play spoiler at home here. It's going to be very freezing in Chicago in December. Detroit, a dome team coming in there. But this will definitely be a test if Detroit is legitimate or not. I'll say Detroit's able to hang on to this, but this could be a close game. Seattle against San Francisco yet again. San Francisco is going to win this again. They want this division. They definitely have their sights set on a playoff run for sure. I think Seattle's going to be good too, but especially if San Francisco's defensive line's healthy at this point, they're just going to eat Seattle's offensive line alive, and they're going to get to Geno Smith early and often. Eagles at the Cowboys now. So the Cowboys came into Lincoln, beat the Eagles last time. The Eagles are going to get the revenge here, take care of Dallas, get themselves back in the driver's seat for the NFC East. And then the Giants at home against the Packers. I think the Giants can win this game. So now both of those teams are 4-9. Moving along, week 15. We are almost at the end, coming up on the last 4 weeks here. So Thursday night game on the left here, we'll start off. Chargers can beat the Raiders. So Chargers now 12-2, breathing down the neck of the Kansas City Chiefs. They have their own primetime game this week coming up here. But for now, we'll talk about the Colts losing to Steelers. Steelers are going to remain in the hunt for that AFC North. Jets and the Dolphins, fun divisional matchup here. Both 8-5 teams. Both pretty much, it looks like right now, whoever wins this game is going to be in the playoff picture, and whoever loses this game might be out of it. So going down to Miami in December, you know what? Rodgers takes this one. Aaron Rodgers needs this win. He knows the Jets need this win. Not going to have to battle the elements. I think they thrive in that, honestly. They go down there and take care of business against the Miami Dolphins. Big win for them. Tennessee against Houston. Tennessee needs this one bad, so Tennessee's going to pull it out. And then Baltimore against Jacksonville. Two more teams. This is going to be such a great finish in the AFC. So many great matchups here. Even when a game like this, where it doesn't even look like the stakes are that high, has playoff implications for the Titans here, you know it's fun, because then immediately we're following it up with the Ravens and the Jags, who, if the Jags lose this, they could potentially be, they would be out of the divisional lead, but if the Jaguars win this, it would bring the Ravens out of the playoffs. So I think the Ravens do win this game, and we're looking at a 7-7 tie here for the AFC South lead. Now Kansas City going on the road to New England, and Kansas City definitely needs this to stay in the driver's seat for their division, which is crazy because they just started off with they were undefeated for so long, it seemed like, but now they might not even win their division. Kansas City does win this. New England's seeing the writing on the wall by this point. They know they're not a playoff team. As fun as it would be to play spoiler to Kansas City, they're just not as good. Cleveland against Chicago. Cleveland should be able to take this one. Denver against Detroit. You know what? Denver's going to win this game. Denver needs this one to stay in the playoff hunt here, and Detroit still has a pretty comfortable lead in their division. Denver just wants it more. All it comes down to here. Minnesota against Cincinnati. Cincinnati's going to take that. And Dallas versus Buffalo. Give this one to the Buffalo Bills. They need to stay in the hunt for that one seed. They understand that Kansas City has a tough road ahead here. They still have to play Cincinnati and the Chargers. And they also understand that they could definitely even get that 2 seed from the Bengals. They don't want to have to go on the road in the second round, because that is how you end up with 3 straight second round exits. For a team like the Buffalo Bills, who has Super Bowl sights, that is no good. Not at all. So, NFC over here. Falcons against the Panthers. Say the Carolina Panthers can take this one. This is actually on a Saturday. So Panthers improved to 6-8. They're still very much in the mix for that NFC South. And they very well may be here after Green Bay is able to take care of Tampa Bay at home. Tampa Bay, warm weather team going up to the frozen tundra there in Green Bay. So Green Bay improves to 5-9. They're honestly not out of the playoff mix either. Minnesota's 7-7 is the last wild card team here. Green Bay's 5-9. They're right there still. New York Giants against the New Orleans Saints. Man, this is tough. Both of these teams are just having such a rough go about it this year, it seems like. But honestly, we'll go with the New Orleans Saints here at home. So the New Orleans Saints will improve to 4-10. New York Giants will drop to 4-10. Disappointing season for the Giants for sure after making the playoffs last year. And the Saints, I know a lot of people think the Saints can win this NFC South, but it just doesn't seem like it's a reality right now. Washington coming off the bye against the LA Rams. LA should be able to win this one. Actually, you know what? We'll go with Washington. I love that matchup of their defensive line against the LA Rams offensive line. I do think that Washington's going to get to Matt Stafford early and often. They're going to get a lot of pressure on him. If Matt Stafford's even healthy by this point, it seems to be a trend with him his whole career, but especially with the Rams having a pretty poor offensive line, that's not what you want to see for a quarterback like Matthew Stafford. Then Philadelphia Eagles going into Seattle. That'll be a tough matchup, very tough matchup, and Seattle Seahawks need this win as well. Honestly, this is a trap game for the Eagles. I think Seattle can win this for sure. So moving along now, Week 16. We'll start on the NFC side. So LA Rams against New Orleans Saints. Saints fresh off that win last week. This is a Thursday night matchup. Think the LA Rams are going to be able to rebound here. New Orleans Saints have a much less potent defensive line than the Washington Commanders did. Matthew Stafford's got a lot more time than he did the week before. Um, Green Bay against Carolina. Green Bay can take this one. Both those teams need this to stay in the hunt, so they'll both be 6-9, but we'll see if they're even able to make it in here. Minnesota against Detroit. I think Minnesota can take this at home. They understand they need this win to try to stay in the hunt here for both the wild card spot, but also that division's right there too. Arizona against Chicago, two cellar dweller teams. Kyler Murray should be back by this point, but I don't think it even matters. Chicago's going to get this game. Giants against the Eagles. We know how this goes. Giants lose. Commanders at the Jets. Jets need this game to stay in the playoff hunt. They take this at home. Falcons against the Indianapolis Colts. You know what? I'll say Indianapolis wins this on the road. Tennessee against Seattle. Give this one to Seattle. Seattle definitely has their sights set on winning this NFC West. Jacksonville against Tampa Bay. So this one could go either way too. These are both teams sitting at 7-7, fourth seed in their conference. Intra-Florida matchup. I'll go with the Jacksonville Jaguars. They have the better quarterback. They're the better coach team. But this will be a fun game. This could be an interesting one. Even though it doesn't have direct... They're in different conferences. They kind of are in the same situation on both sides here. But Tampa Bay still should be all right in their division, even with the loss. And Jacksonville definitely needs this win to stay in the driver's seat. Dallas at the Dolphins. Dallas should be able to take this game. Their defense is just going to be too much, even for the great Miami offense. I really believe that. I think Dallas's offense will be effective enough to find results against Miami's defense. Then we have Baltimore against the San Francisco 49ers. San Fran's going to take this. And then over here, we've got Kansas City against the Las Vegas Raiders. Kansas City's going to keep it rolling. Patriots against the Broncos. Honestly, I think New England could pull this out. Play spoiler a little bit to the Denver Broncos. Even though New England doesn't have a shot, Denver kind of has a hope of a prayer if they win this game. I think New England's going to say not so fast. Your season's over just like ours is. Houston against the Cleveland Browns. Cleveland wins this one. Cleveland might end up making a playoff spot here. Still 2 weeks left, but it's looking promising. Buffalo Bills against the Los Angeles Chargers. This is a fun one down the stretch here. So both of these teams need this game for just seeding purposes at this point. Though I do think the Chargers can win this one. I'm not entirely sold on Buffalo's offensive line. I wasn't last year. I'm still not this year. And I don't love the receiving options outside of Stephon Diggs. While it should be enough to beat teams most weeks, I don't know about this week. The Chargers are just a very head-to-toe solid team. I love the Chargers this year. I think they're definitely going to make some noise. They have something to prove. I love the Chargers back when they were even in San Diego with Phillip Rivers, so maybe I'm a little bit biased, but they always seem to have a way of coming up short. Maybe this is the year that changes. Then we have a divisional matchup here between the Bengals and Steelers. And you know what? Maybe the Steelers can win this game because the Bengals are riding high for a while now, which is crazy because that would drop the Bengals all the way to the 7th seed. So they lose 2 games to start the season, and then they only lose to Seattle and now Pittsburgh since then, but that's still not even enough. They're going to be the 7th seed here, which opens up so many possibilities in the AFC. Before we progress, there's one thing I want to check. This is bothering me. I feel like I missed a game with the 49ers. Alright. They're going to beat the Cardinals. No sweat there. Okay. So now week 17. Formerly the last week of the season, but no longer. Start over here with the Thursday night game. Jets and the Browns. This will be a fun one. We've got playoff positioning on the line, absolutely. And Aaron Rodgers is going to grab it by the throat. He's going to go take that wild card spot. Says that's ours. Sorry, Cleveland. And that seems like a very Browns ending to the season, although they are still definitely in the mix here. Raiders against the Colts. We'll throw the Raiders a bone. They've only had one win so far. Sorry, Raiders. Ravens and the Dolphins. Both of these teams need this one, though. It seems like the clock's striking midnight on the Dolphins season here. Say Baltimore is able to win this one, which is unfortunate for Miami. I really thought they had a good shot this year. They still do, but they're 8-8 as it stands right now in these predictions. Buffalo against New England. Buffalo takes that. Same with Tennessee. Got Cincinnati at Kansas City. This is where Cincinnati needs a win. Kansas City kind of needs it too, but we'll give it to Cincinnati here. And the Chargers going to beat the Broncos, setting up a fantastic Week 18 matchup between the Chargers and the Chiefs here. Then Carolina and Jacksonville. Jacksonville takes care of this. Sorry, Carolina. Seems like their season's all but over at this point. Pittsburgh against Seattle. And you know what? I'm going to give this one to Pittsburgh. I really think Pittsburgh's 12-4 might seem like a little ambitious for them, but they have a very well-rounded roster. I know there are some question marks with Kenny Pickett, but I think they're going to have a strong season. Dallas against the Detroit Lions. Dallas is going to win this one, and it's going to keep Detroit on their toes. Detroit's now definitely in a battle for their division win here. Eagles are going to take care of the Cardinals. LA Rams should be able to take the New York Giants. San Fran over Washington. New Orleans Saints could definitely play spoiler a little bit here to the Tampa Bay Bucks, but even then it might not matter. Tampa Bay already kind of has this division locked up. Atlanta against Chicago. Give this one to Chicago, the cold weather game. And Green Bay at Minnesota. Minnesota's going to win this. Minnesota wants that division, and that's going to all but end Green Bay's season. Not a bad season for them at all by any means. They're 6-10 right now, still with 1 week left. But hey, you know who else went 6-10 his first year as a Packers starter? Aaron Rodgers. So not the worst place to be. Now, last week of the season. Sorry if this is going on a little long again, but no interconference matchups, of course, in the final week of the season. We'll start on the NFC side. I feel like this side's definitely going to be a lot more juicy. So, Tampa Bay against Carolina. This one actually could potentially be for the division. Tampa Bay is going to hang on, though, so they'll win the division yet again at 8-9 like they did last year. Dallas against Washington. Dallas should be able to win this game. Setting up the Eagles kind of needing to win against the Giants, right? Yeah, so the Eagles need to win this game, which I think they will. So the Eagles end up 14-3 like last year. Dallas right behind them at 13-4. Minnesota versus Detroit for the division. This one's getting flexed to Sunday night for sure if this is the case. But in the meantime, San Francisco is going to beat LA. Rams finish 6-11. Seattle takes care of Arizona. They finished 1-16, which honestly that wouldn't surprise me at all. Arizona has a very rough roster right now. Atlanta against the New Orleans Saints. Atlanta can take this game. So both these teams finished 5-12. As rough of a go about it as the Saints had, they end up 5-12. It wasn't brutal, but definitely a bad season on their part. Chicago against the Green Bay Packers. Green Bay finishes on a high note, 7-10. And then call this game right now. I think Detroit wins this game. I do. I think Detroit ends up taking this division. And it's not a bad thing for Minnesota because they end up with the 7 seed. So both these teams end up making the playoffs. Over here on the AFC side, Jets are going to take the Patriots to try to climb back into the playoffs. Just crazy because they're 12-5 and they're fighting for the 7 seed. Just shows how amazing the AFC is going to be this year. Buffalo Bills against the Miami Dolphins. The Dolphins might even play spoiler here to the Buffalo Bills to send the Jets up, but I don't know if that will actually happen. I'll have the Buffalo Bills winning for now, but man, that'd be quite something if the Dolphins do pull off that upset and the Jets end up winning the division, because that would send Buffalo all the way down to the 7 seed. Just shows how crazy this conference is. Then Pittsburgh against Baltimore. Baltimore's going to win this one to try to climb back in, which would kick Pittsburgh out at 12-5. So Pittsburgh could go 12-5 and still miss the playoffs. That's absolutely bonkers to me. Cleveland against Cincinnati. Again, Cleveland needs this win too. So how would this look if Cleveland won? Cincinnati could miss the playoffs if Cleveland wins this game. So I don't believe that happens. Cleveland's going to miss at 11-6, which is unfortunate. That's a really good. That's a good season for them. Um, Houston against Indianapolis. Houston will take this one. Both teams will finish 3-14. That'll be good for them because they'll both get high draft picks again next year. They'll both be able to continue building up their rosters. Definitely brighter days ahead for these two teams. Jacksonville against the Tennessee Titans. This one's for the division like it was last year. And like last year, I think Jacksonville can take this one. I like Jacksonville. I don't love them like some people might, but I definitely think they'll be able to get back into the playoffs. Denver against Oakland. I'm sorry, Vegas. This one's a little bit irrelevant at this point. We'll give it to the Raiders just to give them another win. Now the Chiefs and the Chargers. Man. So where would the Chiefs go if they lose this? They would fall down to the 5 seed. But if the Chiefs win, the Chargers would be the 5 seed. So that's crazy. One of these teams is going to be the 5 seed at 14-3. And I guess in this case it will be the Los Angeles Chargers. So I'm predicting a sweep then of the Chiefs on the Chargers. I don't know if that actually ends up happening. But you can never bet against Patrick Mahomes. You can never count him out, right? So we'll give the Chiefs the nod here against the LA Chargers, which here's our final standings, folks. We have really fascinating stuff on both conferences here. So in the NFC, we have the Eagles as the 1 seed, 49ers as the 2 seed, the Lions as the 3 seed, Tampa Bay Bucks as the 4 seed, Dallas Cowboys at the 5 spot, Seattle 6, and Minnesota 7. So the only change in the NFC from the playoffs last year in this scenario would be Detroit makes the playoffs and the New York Giants miss it. And then, of course, Detroit ends up as division winner. Minnesota drops down to a wild card spot. Other than that, it's pretty close to last year's standings. Just kind of some middling teams here behind Tampa Bay in the NFC South. Green Bay knocking on the door of a playoff spot. Arizona at the bottom of the standings. Rams kind of out in no man's land. And the Giants taking a giant step back. Sorry about that. And then on the AFC side, this is just crazy to me. So Kansas City goes 15-2, and they finish with the 1 seed. The LA Chargers are the 5 seed, even though they go 14-3. So the LA Chargers have a better record than every team in the National Football League, except for the Kansas City Chiefs, and they're tied with the Philadelphia Eagles. Yet they're going to have to go on the road yet again week 1 in the playoffs to none other than Jacksonville Jaguars, the same matchup as last year. Although we'll do the playoff predictions in a second here, but I do believe the Chargers will get their revenge this year. Then we have the Bengals as the 2 seed, Bills as the 3 seed. Not really any surprises there, although both of these teams are facing tight competition in their division. Wouldn't be surprised if one of these teams doesn't win their division. And that could even apply to the Jacksonville Jaguars too if the Tennessee Titans win. So potentially the Chargers could win the West. Potentially the Ravens, Steelers, or Browns could win the North. Jets could potentially win the East. And I'm not going to count out the Miami Dolphins either. And then the South, of course, the Titans could push for that. So moving on to the playoffs then. And we can look at the draft order here too. So the Arizona Cardinals have the number 1 pick. The Colts, Texans, Raiders. This is the Chargers. Hold on. Whose first round pick do they have? I'll look into this in just a second, but okay, I don't know why that says the Chargers. Ignore that. We'll do some playoff predictions here real quick. Dallas is going to take over against Tampa Bay. Seattle against Detroit. I think Seattle can win that game too. I think Seattle could go on the road and take Detroit. Just a better coach team. I don't love Seattle in the trenches, which I think is going to come back to bite them in the divisional round, but then San Francisco takes care of the Vikings. Then on the AFC side, definitely the LA Chargers against the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think we'll see the Buffalo Bills beat the Baltimore Ravens, and the Cincinnati Bengals take care of Aaron Rodgers and the Jets. So now on to the divisional round. We have the Bengals and the Bills yet again from last year. I think this time the Bengals win again. They'll even be at home this time. Then on the the NFC side, we'll have the rematch of the Cowboys and the 49ers. I think Dallas actually wins it this time. And we'll keep it on the NFC side. Eagles take care of business against the Seahawks. And then, man, I really don't want to predict that the Chiefs beat the Chargers 3 straight times in this year, sweep them 3-0, but if there's one man who can do it, it's Patrick Mahomes. So I'll give the Chiefs the nod here for the moment being. Then we get to the conference championship game, and I'll say the Eagles beat the Cowboys here, even though they split in the regular season. Link's going to be jacked for that game. Dallas coming to town, Super Bowl on the line. And then on the AFC side, we have Chiefs against the Bengals. Patrick Mahomes hosting his 6th straight AFC championship game. This man's never played a road playoff game. But you know what? I think Joe Burr is going to pull it out this time. He's going to get his turn, so we're going to set up an Eagles-Bengals Super Bowl matchup. And I think Jalen Hurts gets it done in the Super Bowl. Call me biased if you will, but I wouldn't be surprised if this goes either way here. Bengals are definitely a very talented team, but I think the Eagles just, as strong as their offensive line is, as strong as their defensive line is, as strong as their secondary even is, and as strong as their receivers are, like they're just a very well-rounded team. And of course, Jalen Hurts. It's very hard to find a weakness on this Eagles roster. So I think the Eagles take the Super Bowl here against the Cincinnati Bengals. All right. And I think that should just about do it. Sorry if this drug on a little long, but like I said, I could talk about this stuff all day. If you stuck through to the end, I appreciate that.